Welcome to the Sold Too Early Sports Card Podcast, currently under psychological evaluation. I'm Christmas Gifts for sale for trade, and we don't have Kai today, unfortunately. He is, I guess, recovering from Christmas. He's still upset about the Colts and Matt Ryan, all that good stuff. But we have someone who is a little bit better, in my opinion. Someone who I've known for, frankly, a very long time. I've been very fortunate to be on his podcast several times. Maybe you've heard me, maybe you haven't because of audio issues, but we have Rob from Sports Card Therapist on today. Rob, how you doing, my man? Merry Christmas and all that good stuff. How are you?
Dave, how you doing, man? Listen,
Dude,
it's a pleasure to be on your show, and I will do my best to fill the absence of Kai. I don't think anyone could fill the absence of Kai because you guys have an awesome chemistry. You guys have a great thing going. So I'm just kind of, I'm not filling in for him. I think I'm just kind of I'm like a pinch hitter at this point.
I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with that. We were supposed to have Sasha T on the podcast last week, and he had flight issues. So the fact you're already here moves you into like that upper echelon of guest hosts, which is completely fine. Really happy you're here. Super excited, dude. I can't believe that we are really at the Christmas holiday. We're almost at New Year's. What a crazy 2022. And it kind of leads into like that weekly thoughts. I really can't believe we're at this point. I can't believe this podcast is now on episode 12. I'm sure you have the same reaction. Like you're at episode like what 135, give or take. So
Yeah.
dude, it's so weird. Like I think I'm starting to understand like how you saw your podcast as was just like starting and growing. Like it really truly it's incredible. And I love it. And I'm really happy to do this. And I think the Christmas time and the end of the year gives me perspective. And I always try to like write down my thoughts. I have started now like putting like my words into like my yearly post about like, hey, here's what happened this past year. Here's some like good photos. Like I like that perspective. And I like that like look into where cards and life in general has gone. And I'm really excited where 22 started and ended and where 2023 is going to go. And I'm already prepping for Dallas. Like it's only 2.5 weeks away. I'm not sure if you're attending or not, but
Yeah, no, not attending Dallas. And the reason typically I won't ever jump on a plane to go to a show, or I should say I haven't yet, unless it's for national.
really,
Like 2 years ago, went out to Chicago, drove to Atlantic City. But the reason why I'm not jumping on planes and going to different shows is just because, I have two young kids at home
your
and
responsibilities.
for me that's not the that wouldn't be the right move, and but this year with national being in Chicago again, my wife, so we've already talked, my wife's like, yeah, absolutely, you could be gone for 3 solid days, and
Have you?
so that's kind of the plan. But yeah, congrats on the podcast for you and Kai, and how many episodes you guys are in. That's amazing. I tell you what, like I have so many thoughts just on your opening, so I'm going to try to keep them brief. I don't want to completely derail this, but um I know for me early on, so I started the podcast I think April of 2023 is going to be 2 years. So I started like in
Wow.
April of 2021. Yeah, and I tell you, like for me, the first like 15 to 20 episodes felt really difficult for me. I think you guys probably have a better grasp on it than I did early on. It felt really difficult for me. I felt like I was having a difficult time like coming up with compelling content. So what it did was it really forced me to jump in feet first. Like they kind of played off each other, like my participation in the hobby along with the podcast. Like I couldn't really have one without the other, it almost felt like. So
Makes
I
sense.
really, yeah, so I really just jumped in, and what I started to do was like you're saying, like you're putting your thoughts down on paper, you're starting to really think about things. I know for me, like what the podcast has done is now I know that every time I do something hobby related, I'm likely going to be discussing it. I'm going to be discussing that whatever it is I'm doing in the moment, hobby related, I'm going to be discussing it. So it forces me to pay attention a little closer rather than just haphazardly like, "Oh, I'm just going to go to a show, see what happens," or "I'm just going to do this deal even though I'm not sure if it feels right." Like I'm really kind of I've become more focused, I think.
Dude, honestly, I feel that transition happening. I mean, I am very kind of like lackadaisical about things. Like, yeah, I'll figure it out later. Like, yeah, this 10K deal, whatever. Like, it's funny. We'll do it. Like, I do see myself now as that content does become to come out, and I intend on this podcast being multi years down the line. Like, you do have to kind of like sharpen your own skills and sharpen your focus on what you're doing, because I'm starting to notice things in the sports card world that I never really would have before. And having an outlet to like talk about it and like have conversation about it and have people give feedback is incredible. Like, it's different, I think, for you, because like your entire like online persona is the Sports Card Therapist podcast and your Instagram channel and your Twitter and all the other good stuff you do. With me, it's kind of like I can kind of go back and forth between like Extraordinary Cards and the Sold Too Early podcast, but like it's starting to meld, because I've had a lot of people come up to me at shows like, hey, I love what you do. Like, this is really interesting. And we have a good conversation. I'm sure, you have set such a high bar of expectation for content creators who want to do podcasts that while we will never reach that level, like what you've done, you have really set like that trail for us, which is really important.
Well, I appreciate that. And what's crazy is like, honestly, I don't even feel that. I mean, when I'm at shows, and that's a big part of the reason why I just love being at shows. I love being at shows regardless, even if I
Yep.
didn't have the podcast, I'd be at shows. But getting that feedback from people, and like you said, but when you're at a show and someone comes up to you and they're like, "Hey, love the podcast," or "Hey, I was just listening to you on the way here," or "Hey," like that stuff is really awesome. And it's like that idea of when people are talking about like the economy, I guess,
Yep.
or life in general. It's like it's never going as good as you think it's going, or it's never going as bad as you think it's going. It's usually kind of somewhere in the middle. Like I still don't feel like I've really accomplished anything close to what I want to as far as the podcast and the content is concerned. You know what I mean? But
But that's
I also,
the good thing. That's exactly it. Like, we're
yeah.
never satisfied with what we want to do, and that's the goal expectation for 2023. I want to grow this podcast 10x by next year. Like, that's my pen and paper
Well,
goal.
you
I want
can
to
do
go.
that because you had that big YouTube following
Yeah,
with the gaming thing, right? And now
exactly.
because you started up the podcast and the YouTube channel, now you're going back to your gaming roots a little bit, right?
Exactly. Dude, this is like my true passion is content creation. Like, I love sports cards, don't get me wrong, but like my true passion is the content creation behind it. So while I'll never be the vlogger at Dallas, being, "What's up, guys? It's your boy here. We're gonna go do this deal," and like get people on camera who I don't want to, which
It's
goes
your
into,
boy Extraordinary Cards
dude, I
coming
I
at
would
you.
hate myself if I did that. And that actually leads into another weekly thoughts. I wrote down 4. It was Christmas, Dallas, PWCC wins. I'm not. Do you bid on the auctions at all, or like you don't really like? I don't really see you posting as much. I'm not sure like
So
what you're
yeah,
talking.
I've done it a few times.
Okay,
So,
so
yeah, so in the last month I haven't really posted any card pickups, and that's
yep.
because I've been so hyper focused on, and I don't want to turn this into a talk about my show or anything, but
No, it's fine.
the month of December has been like the month of roundtables that I've been doing. So I've been doing 3 episodes, really 4 episodes a week of my show. I've been doing 3 roundtables and then a weekly reflection like on Saturday. And then also, I might go on someone else's show. So I've picked up so many cards this past month, but I haven't posted anything because I really wanted to promote all the roundtables I've been doing, and I wanted my Instagram page, like a little bit of OCD in me, wanted my Instagram page to really like be in unison of like the advertisement for the roundtable, then the video clip,
Makes sense.
advertisement for the roundtable, video clip. So I'm trying not to like overpost. I'm really trying to put a lot of focus on these roundtables because of how much time, effort, energy, and passion has gone into these roundtables. I mean, for it, for me, I feel like it's some of the best card content I've ever heard. These roundtables,
Yeah,
and so
I wish
I'm
I.
really trying to push that. So,
I wish I could have been on the one that you recorded yesterday night. I'm not sure when that comes out and like, how much of a
oh,
spoiler it is, but like
listen. I
It
know,
sucks
and
it can
so
be
I
there.
invited so for your listeners, I invited Dave to come on. I'm trying to we were trying to work out multiple days here, and that's the thing, when you have on multiple guests, it is so difficult to really nail down a day, like a set night or a set day and time that work for all 4 or 5 people involved on the roundtable. So last night we did a high-end roundtable, which
Yep.
came out incredible. We had Jason Kuntz from OTS Sports. We had Eric
Wait,
Myers
what?
from Halo Hustle.
Oh
And
my
then
god! I wish I was on this. I didn't realize Jason was gonna be on it.
yeah, and then we had the Captain 37, Kevin
Yep.
Randall. He's got all the high-end Tom Brady flawless cards, like he's got the Tom Brady market cornered, basically. And yeah, it ended up going about 90 minutes, and it was one of the most incredible high-end talks I've ever heard. It
Dude, you
was
would have
just
put
it
me.
was
Sorry.
I was a fly on the wall and they just talked, and it was one of those things. So I definitely wanted to get you on there from that dealer perspective, but we couldn't make it work. But I know I want to have you and Kai on my show regardless,
Well,
at some point in the near future.
we're absolutely excited to do that. And the funny thing is too is that you would have had me like it's like the Christmas table where like you have all the kids by themselves and the adults. You'd have stuck me at the adult table because I mean, dude, I know some of those guys and the collections they have is insane. And I appreciate you considering me like an expert in like the dealer world. But yeah, I would have been a child compared to like those
What
people, which
You
is
know
so
what,
funny.
that was some comments that the Captain 37 and I both were kind of making, like, we were kind of like making jokes because Jason Kuntz and Eric Myers were just having these incredible conversations, like, just about the market and talking about which cards are incredible plays right now. Like Eric Myers, he works for PWCC, but
He
he
does.
also has massive cards, 7-figure cards. And he was talking about how the Jeter rookie foil, the PSA 10 is like criminally low
Okay.
right now at like 240K, but somehow a BGS 9.5 just sold for 6,000. And he's like, listen, that BGS 9.5, believe me, like the pop, because those cards are so hard to get like nines and tens in. It's like, I think PSA has like, I don't know, just an insane amount. I looked it up once. I think it was like 20,000 of them graded, like almost like the Jordan Fleer rookie. But to
Yep.
get a 9 or a 10, it's in the single digits or double digits. I mean, I think there's 20 PSA 10s.
Dude, it's
So he
ridiculous.
was
Well,
like, you got to look for, you know, areas where it's like there's just such a massive difference in the BGS 9.5 to the PSA 10, and they spent a good 10 to 15 minutes talking about that Jeter foil on what a move that would be right now, because pretty soon that Jeter foil PSA 10 will be $1 million card. It'll
I mean,
be $1 million card at some point. And what do you think that BGS 9.5 will go to if it's at 6K right now?
20K, 25K. It would all depend, dude. I don't know. Like at this point in the market, I'm kind of just like, no, I'm not silently observing. I'm still buying stuff, but I don't feel confident enough to ever put my name to quote unquote financial advice, quote unquote card
Yeah.
investment knowledge. Dude, fucking I'm not Jim Cramer. We were talking about that before. I'm someone who you can see what I'm doing. You can emulate that if you want to, but I'll post everything I do, and that's kind of like my expertise. I've been in this on Instagram for 7-8 years now, which is wild to say. I would never feel comfortable being that hashtag financial guru who gonna lose you your money if you buy Zach Wilson, Russell Wilson. Trevor Lawrence was bad for a while. Now he's playing well. It's just so funny to me. Like I don't ever want to be accountable for someone making bad financial decisions.
Well, and I think that when it comes to these huge, high priced younger guys cards, I mean, it's almost like it's a losing battle, even if
It
they
is.
win, right? Even if they win, like I think the only reason why like Giannis prices didn't completely tank in the last year or two was because he finally won a ring. Like when the Bucks finally won, you heard like this like exhale across the country from
Yep.
Giannis collectors, because it was like at any point, you know what I mean? And even though he's definitely a top player, but it's like all these players' prices, these young guys, it's the rings are just baked into all their prices, and there's no reason why a Zach Wilson or a Trevor Lawrence should be going for as much or more than a Tom Brady
Well,
rookie
that's just,
auto.
dude. This entire episode could be about my thoughts on younger players and the hype versus production, but
But you dip your toe into vintage every once in a while.
yes,
Every once in a while, you post a vintage card, and if you look behind me and you see that Gaudy Babe Ruth, that
yeah,
came
it was
from you.
mine. I moved it to you.
That came from you.
Yes.
And so and just last night, or earlier this week, I should say, you had posted the BGS 7.5 of the Magic Bird
Yes,
Dr.
and I
J.
moved that yesterday night, which is funny.
The moment I saw you, at the moment it came across my feed, I hit you up and you're like, just moved it. And I was like, and then I followed up with, what would you move it at? Like, because I
Yeah,
do want to vicariously live through, like, what would I have pitched him? You know what I mean, in my head, because it's just kind of fun, to do that. But you do dip your toe into vintage, and it seems like the more you're more of a dealer slash flipper, right?
correct.
So I think, though, the longer people are in the hobby, it does feel like people do slowly move toward vintage a little bit more, because it's low and slow as far as like value.
I mean, in my opinion, dude, you really think I like the strategic plan on X, Y, and Z when I execute this, dude? It just happens to work out that way.
But you always get such great stuff, though.
Thank you. So what
Yeah,
I've
man.
realized, and this is something that, like, card wise, I don't think I've ever really admitted. I will never DM anyone about a card. If someone wants something, they're coming to me, because in my mind it represents, like, not power over the situation, but it's like, you want something from me, you have to
100%.
pay the price, and I will never ever DM someone first about an item. They
So
usually,
even if you see a card that you really, really like, even if it's from someone that's on equal playing field as you won't reach out to someone?
nope, I will never,
Oh
I'll
my
never reach
god.
out first.
Imagine how many cards have kind of fallen through the cracks that. Wow, that's
Yeah, dude,
but that does make sense, though, because it's the equivalent of someone coming up to your table you are set up at a show. You immediately kind of have the upper hand there.
that's unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it. It's kind of like what I've learned. I guess it's through the show experience and also on Instagram and, like, that larger presence, thankfully. But, like, I I've become very good at cycling through the white noise of the hobby, which unfortunately these days is like 99.8% of things. I'm not sure about you and how often, like, you'll travel the shows, like, you'll walk around, like, see stuff. It takes me maybe 5 seconds, 10 seconds to look at someone's table and, like, see what's in there. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but, like, you can, like, decipher through that noise extremely quickly if you know what you're looking for or what not to look
Mm.
for, even.
It's crazy you say that, because my buddy Ken, his podcast is Sports Card Lessons. So him and I,
Yes.
so we're always kind of setting up at shows together and just talking on a regular basis. And it's when you set up at shows, typically you don't have a ton of time to walk the room and see what else is in there. So if I can get away for 10 minutes, if it feels like this show is kind of slowing down, like there's a lull in the traffic, I'll say, hey, Ken, can you watch my table real quick? I'm going to walk the room. And what I'll do is I'll basically power walk the entire show, doing exactly what you said. I am literally scanning cases. I almost feel like the Terminator. You know how, like, you could scan some, like Terminator eyes, like you scan it and then, like, things kind of get highlighted on the
Yes, I do
screen, like.
this.
Yeah. So, like, I'm power walking through, because for me, really the only thing I'm looking for is vintage. And I've fallen down that vintage rabbit hole the last year or so, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me in the hobby, I feel like. And so I know exactly scanning and just power walking. And so, to your point, totally get that. Part of me does envy, though, the people that go to shows and they walk around and they come back to your table like 4 times, and it's because they've done 4 slow laps, like they've been there 6 hours. Like, part of me is like, oh man, that's got to be so cool, just really just taking in every single card that's here. But
I hate to be that guy. I really think what truly happened, at least for me, is as I've stepped into that higher end world. And first of all, let me make this clear. There are people who are much younger than me who are significantly more wealthier than me. Awesome. More power to them. And like I respect that a lot. I've tried to keep that humility as like the everyman. But as you step into the higher end world, that filter that you have for like those items or those things you see significantly increases to the point where I would hate the idea of being at a show for 6 hours and not set up. Like that would be miserable to me.
Yeah.
I guess
and
I
hear what you're saying. Especially because did you see that show promoter? I think he was out of New York. He posted a sign that said,
oh, you can't trade at shows. Was that the one you're talking? Yep. So for anyone who is not familiar with what we're talking about, a show vendor, show setup, whatever, they put out like an 8x10 picture, whatever. And I was like, hey, listen, you are not welcome to trade at this show if you're not a vendor. Like, if you want to do any deals with anyone who is not set up, like leave the show, which is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. Collectors coming in who are not set up and like just want to walk and make deals and sell and trade even with each other. That is like the actual lifeblood of sports cards. It's not the 20 vendors, 50 vendors who see each other in Chicago, Dallas, Burbank, Nashville, Atlanta, X, Y, and Z. Like we all see each other generally. Like we know who each other are as people, but you're gonna ruin the everyday collector or the guy who wants to spend $500, $1,000, $1,200, whatever it is, with some of those lower end dealers if they choose to, or other collectors. So you're kind of ruining for yourself, and also getting bad publicity, and then your show's not going to continue, and then you're shooting yourself in the foot for no reason.
So I'm just looking up now because John Newman of Sports Card Nation podcast, friend of mine, good guy. He had this guy on his show. He's going to be on the 30th. So he's
the actual vendor, the showrunner who did this.
Yeah, the show promoter did this. So it was a show in Syracuse, and it's the promoter of Collector Fest. So the promoter of Collector Fest. So I completely agree with you that you're really going to be alienating a lot of the people. And the whole reason why I brought that up is, to your point, being at a show for 6 hours and not set up, there is so much heat and so many cool cards that people bring to shows with them that are not set up. So in a way, you're really kind of cutting off your nose despite your face when you have no opportunity to see what everyone else is carrying around in their Zion boxes.
Dude, I have friends who have nicer collections than I do who just personally do not like to set up at shows. That's a personal preference. They have stuff that is 6 figures plus in 20, 30 cards. They could easily have a showcase or two, but they personally would rather walk the show because it's easier for them to make deals. That's fine. Listen, there's a million different ways to make money in sports cards, which is super funny, and everyone has their own flavor. And if they were told not to come back to a show because they were not set up, like what are you even thinking? What's the point? It doesn't make sense.
And especially because I think it's got to be about the kids at the end of the day. The hobby has to be about, teaching that next generation, because if that next generation, lower than us or younger than us doesn't pick up cards and doesn't learn cards, then as we continue to age into old men, there's going to be less and less of a demand for our cards, and the values will go down. So these kids that come to shows, even adults, but I'm saying like the kids though, they come, they have their cards, they want to be able to trade and do the trade up challenge and do all these.
Oh my God.
Things. You know what I mean? Well, why are you laughing about that?
No, it's so funny because one of the notes I have for the weekly thoughts was card disciples, because it was like the theme of Christmas. And what I was thinking when I wrote that was people who watch influencers. I'm not going to name any because there's so many.
Yeah.
But those who like kind of miss the point and think that like everything that happens on a camera is real life, and takes their lessons but learns it the wrong way in sports cards. And I was just laughing at the thought of like, someone watching an influencer who does a trade up challenge, but just like missing the point of it, and like is just going to every single table with like a base card of like Todd Gurley and just like, do you want to trade this for this $10,000 card which has happened. I've seen people do that at shows. I just laugh. So,
Wow.
dude,
Yeah.
I respect kids who do it. I couldn't do that, but like, it
No.
is funny that, you know, obviously the next generation of people beyond you and I will, it'll be interesting. There might be, we've never seen sports cards be at the prices they are. I know in the last year or two it's down, but like you stretch it out long enough, you know, $20, $50, whatever you could spend in a week or a month if you were a small kid, get you a lot farther then than it would now. It's just wild.
Well, and so definitely I feel like we need to I feel like we do have an obligation, as crazy as that sounds. I know people are like, I have no responsibility for nothing except myself, and that's totally cool. I get it, but I think that I'll say I'll speak for myself. I have an obligation to let kids and make kids feel as welcome as possible. And one thing that I discussed on one of my roundtables, I had women in the hobby on, and I had some of the
Yes.
best women. Yeah, it was some of the best women. You know, Christina's PC from Card Ladder, Mama's Breaks, Love What You Collect, Erica. I had Sharon, Black Jaded Wolf, and one thing I said, and I didn't even realize it until they were on, and I was kind of like, I haven't had one teenage or you know, younger girl come up to my table about the trade up challenge. It's just been a lot of boys like
Oh,
ages
interesting.
like 7 to 15 kind of thing. And so I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and my wife loves sports. She doesn't like sports cards, my wife, but she's a diehard Giants, Yankees fan, just like me. Like, she can
Good
talk
taste.
sports with any man, you know. And now my daughter, she knows daddy's cards, you know. So like, if I get a really big card, you know, I let her hold the slab and play with it and stuff, and I take a picture with her, you know, holding the big slab, you know, like a big Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth, and to me that means so much. And I could tell my daughter's really starting to get into it. So I want a hobby where she won't feel like an outcast. And I don't know how that starts. I think I do, but you know, I'm just trying to, you know, so whether if it's a trade up challenge, whether if it's whatever, and even these influencers that are like unrealistic or doing it just for the views or doing whatever the case, like if it's inspiring kids to, you know, get involved, like, you know, keep doing it, you know. I wish
It's
when I was younger, you know, we had the internet and all these influencers, because I collected cards, you know, in the 80s and early 90s and stuff. And sometimes it felt like I was on an island collecting cards.
I mean, I can tell you right now, it's the most solo hobby that involves people you could ever have, which is that's a very interesting way of thinking about it. But like, we are kind of all alone in this. I mean, yeah, we have friends, we have allies who can help us collect, but we are alone, but we're also all together in this, which is super weird when you put it like that.
Yeah,
It's just a
and
thought.
you know, I think, but to that point too. So, you know, like many people, I came back in the hobby at the beginning of the pandemic, but I was in and out of the hobby over the last 15 years. You know, I came back in like 2009, 2010. I was buying up cards, I was collecting, had all my stuff in binders and stuff. 2013, I came back. I was buying a little bit more memorabilia. I was buying a ton of signed like 8x10s of all the goats, Montana, Peyton Manning. And I had dozens and dozens of them just, you know, all over my walls. And but the thing is, there was no community to keep me there.
Yep.
And I think because, you know, I had my personal Instagram page, I had my personal Facebook page, personal Twitter page, that kind of thing. I started seeking out card profiles on Instagram, especially. And I think the community is a big part of what kept me in the hobby, because if I felt like I did when I was, you know, younger, 7, 8 years old, like, oh, I really don't have any other friends that collect cards, or I really don't, you know, I don't know if I'd still be here. So the community is truly, I feel like, what has kept me, and is probably the best part of the hobby.
I mean, I agree with you. The crazy thing is, once again, like, I have such a unique interview perspective into cards because I got into it at 18 years old. I stumbled onto Instagram accidentally. Like, I had no intentions of knowing about the sports card world. I just kind of joined it just cause. I got into group breaks, like to start. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I was just stumbling forward, and I just so happened to end up where I
Because
did.
you were spending money playing Madden football,
And that's
right?
exactly it. Dude. Like that
Yeah.
was it. I was like, what the hell is the point of this? Like this is gonna reset in August. Let's go after the real trading cards. And I had no idea what I was doing. And after losing money and like figuring it out, at 18, 19 years old, I'm like, all right, let's approach this like a business. And you know, obviously it's grown beyond that point where I don't even want to do this as a business anymore. I like it as a fun hobby that's lucrative financially, that allows me to travel. Like I could never do trading cards full time, at least at this point in time, because I think I've gotten the knowledge to the point where I know what it is and I want to just maximize that time. To me, the most valuable thing is the time commitment. And knowing what I do now, I can do it in significantly less time than I could 3, 4, 5 years ago, which is all I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't know if I would want to do it full time. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I had millions
Oh my
in
God. Yeah.
cards and
But,
millions of liquidity,
yeah.
yeah, that would probably be fun to do. But I think, doing it full time, even now, like setting up at shows, I know I'm more of a collector than a dealer or flipper in my heart. It's like I've moved cards that in the moment I was like, well, it makes sense. Financially, this makes sense. Like I'm getting like either the better end of the deal or this is fair. I'm happy I'm moving into this other card. But there are cards I really regret moving. And if I wasn't set up at shows, I probably wouldn't have moved those cards. So
Mhm.
um, it's I think doing it if I did it full time, I feel like, it would suck the fun out of it. I don't wanna feel like I ever have to pay my bills to sell a card or
Yes.
sell a card to pay the bills.
And that is the thing that holds me up too, is that I always want to get the best end of the deal no matter what I do. And to have to shortchange myself or take a guarantee loss for no reason financially, I'd be like, this is not worth it. I'd rather just work a job that I'm happy at. And then, also I could work on sports cards for 10 hours out of the week, whatever it is, or more, and just like enjoy myself on top of the podcast, the YouTube. Like this, so many doors have been opened through trading cards that no matter what happens at the end of the day, I'm completely thrilled with where I am and where it's going. So just kind of crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so that was weekly thoughts. We're doing well here. Let's talk through some NFL super quick. I'm not sure how much football you got a chance to watch this weekend. I have a couple notes about some of the more exciting things that I saw. The Broncos delivering coal to their fans this year. At least Nathaniel Hackett did get fired after they lost like what
Well,
52-14.
they have no choice but to fire the head coach, I feel like, because they are stuck with Russell Wilson.
Yes,
And Russell Wilson's one of these guys, and I actually use Russell Wilson and reference him a lot. Because when players are really hot earlier in their career, or even if they've won, like Burrow, well, he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he went to the Super Bowl. I'll
yes,
say, listen, I mean, this guy's 2 or 3 years away from being Russell Wilson, and I don't say that as an insult because I think arguably Russell Wilson is a Hall of Famer, right?
I
I
mean
think he's
that's
probably
he
going to
is.
be a Hall of Famer. So, but the thing is, I mean, his card prices. I mean, you can get his, Contenders rookie auto for dirt cheap. I think I bought one from you, actually. I think I bought one of his rookie autos, right?
Probably. I can tell you that I sold a playoff contenders of him, number 249 or 99 recently.
Okay,
It was
yeah. I
maybe
don't
in the
think it was
last
that one.
it
I,
was in the
I,
last 6 weeks. It was on eBay. It did 2 grand. But that's like one of the better rookie autos of him you could own because Wilson doesn't have a ton of NT stuff. And what I believe happened is that one or two like major collectors actually own most of like those rookie cards. So the market for him is a little bit smaller. And in spite of his play this year, if you compare his prices to a Burrow, a Herbert, a Trevor Lawrence, now it's asinine. But it's the same conversation we can have about Bowman prospects versus like Ronald Acuna or Juan Soto or anyone else, which is actually a note I had for today. It's just if you look at this hobby logistically or logically, I should say, you are going to go mad because it doesn't always make sense.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. Like if you asked me, if you gave me 50K and told me you could either buy Trevor Lawrence rookies, which like high end, which you'd probably only be able to get one, maybe two,
if you're lucky. Yeah.
or I had to spend it all on Russell Wilson rookies high end, I would take absolutely I would take 10 to 15 Russell Wilsons over a single Trevor Lawrence.
I think I have to agree with you. I don't really want to because Russell Wilson's been so bad this year. But hype outsides production, and depending on who the Broncos would bring in as a head coach, it actually might work out for you. Or if they draft another offensive weapon or offensive line, or like, there is an issue with Russell Wilson being 34, 35 years old, obviously falling off since his hand injury. Like there is concern there, but I also don't love Trevor Lawrence's market at all. That's a lot of players, honestly. Like those over leveraged, high drafted players across all sports. So that's like a Zion, that's a Trevor Lawrence, that was Zach Wilson, and then obviously that turned out the way it did. Trey Lance before his injury was one of those examples as well. It's just so interesting to me, man. I just don't. Once again, if you look at this hobby with like a logical set of eyes, it's just madness. So.
Well, and it just comes down to people playing hot potato with these cards, right? Like I think that there are certain dealers out there that are flipping like all these prospects that you're talking about that, if they can make 10% on it, they'll be happy. And especially because 10% on some of these guys are 5K, right? Yep. So you'll be happy to make 10%. But then I think you have some of these dealers or flippers that if they just break even after a month or two, it's almost like a relief. And they're like, oh my God, I thought that card was never going to move. I thought I overpaid for that. I thought I made a mistake.
It's the larger. I said, like, you're worried that the cards are financially sink you. What it comes down to is, you want to call it hot potato. I call it the larger fool fallacy or the greater fool fallacy, whatever it's technically called. Someone's going to be left holding the bag on most items. I guarantee the people who bought Zach Wilson in 2020, 2021 are really hurting right now, because one of the notes I also have is the Jets should make a serious run at a quarterback like Jimmy G. Like, Mike White might be their guy, but Mike White has also basically died behind their offensive line. You need a good quarterback, at least as a backup, and Joe Flacco is not going to be that guy. Go after someone like a Jimmy G type, maybe not necessarily him if you don't want to pay him $20 million. And
listen, as far as the Jets go, I mean, this is baffling to me because the Jets are primed for a Super Bowl run.
Yes.
I mean, literally probably the best defense in all of football. And all they really even need is a game manager. So what this tells me is that either the coach is a complete moron or there is absolutely something wrong with Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco has won over 100 games in his career. He's a Super Bowl winner. Now, he's a shell of himself, yes, but I'll tell you what, Joe Flacco gives you the best chance to win on that roster. So either he's hurt and they're not saying it, but if he's hurt and they're not saying it, why is he even dressing? Why is he on the sidelines in pads ready to go if needed? There is no reason. Listen, if they wanted to get to a Super Bowl this year, Flacco hands down gives them the best chance out of anyone on their roster. So there's something going on with Flacco. He's either injured or the coach needs to be fired. And of course, you're not going to let
Simon go. Listen, the fact that we're having a conversation about Joe Flacco in 2022 tells you everything you need to know about the Jets. I would rather start Mike White. Zach Wilson, in my opinion, will be out of the league in the next 3 or 4 years.
Which is crazy because when you're that high of a draft choice, you are guaranteed at least probably 5 years in the league when you are drafted that high. I wouldn't be surprised if he's out of the league in a year or two, like you said.
But that's the thing too, is that, like, look at someone like Baker Mayfield, who has accepted the fact that he is not a franchise quarterback. That's not a hot take. It's true. He failed in Carolina. He's doing well in the Rams. He will most likely have a long 10-year career, 12-year career as a backup, high-end backup / bridge quarterback, because he accepted humility. He accepted he made mistakes. And if he comes back to the Rams or a team like that where he's not expected to start, he'll make $5 to $10 million a year as the backup quarterback. That's a pretty cushy gig. Might not be a Hall of Fame trajectory, and you might lose a hashtag on the card investments. But for Baker, that is the best path to have a long, successful, quote unquote, career. Might be a disappointment, but if you make $100 million as a backup quarterback, over 12 years, 13 years, pretty cushy, pretty happy. You know what I mean?
I saw you had posted that on Instagram, that take, and
Yep.
I completely agree. I mean, I've never seen a league where quarterbacks are just at such a premium. Like there's probably maybe 12 there's probably 12 teams right now, maybe 15 tops in the league that are happy with their quarterback situation, and then the other 17 to 20 teams absolutely would really want to change up their quarterback position. So when you have someone like Baker, I mean, these last few games that he's had with the Rams, I think has bought himself another 10 years in the league.
I mean,
even as a backup, like you said, even
well,
as a
that's
backup,
exactly right. That's
he
my
was on his way out though.
Yes, if he still was a diva and still was, a little whiny bitch, he would have been out of the league eventually. But I even say the same thing about someone like a Brock Purdy, who I really first off, the story behind Brock Purdy really makes me happy. I love the fact Mr. Irrelevant is doing well in the league. It makes me super happy. Like he might take the 49ers to a deep playoff run. No matter what happens at this point in time, though, he has secured himself a second NFL contract. Like, look at Nick Mullins, the guy who came before him. He's still in the league. He's the backup or the third string in Minnesota. And he wasn't nearly doing the same exact thing as Brock has through 3 starts. So all you really need is that one opportunity if you're either a failed number 1 pick or literally Mr. Irrelevant to get that second contract, third contract, and so on. It's so interesting to me. And I love the story of both, redemption arcs, quote unquote, or opportunities.
Dude, what are the Niners going to do at quarterback long term, right? Like they literally have three legitimate options. And if
Jimmy G's gone. He's not coming back. No shot.
Jimmy G's gone?
No shot. He comes back.
Okay, so he's going to go somewhere, which is crazy because if you think about it, Jimmy G, I know he's got a good starting record like as a career, but he really hasn't done anything in this league. And I think finally that chrome, that people saw on him is starting to fade finally. I mean, even when he was the hottest free agent in all of football, like 3-4 years ago, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I just don't see it. Like, what is like? Do they really think he's going to be the next Aaron Rodgers, aka sitting behind Brett Favre, the way that Jimmy G sat behind Brady? Like, I think
Jimmy G was traded. Actually, I don't think he was a free agent.
Oh, I think they ended up moving him early, but he was gonna be though. There were teams lining up, chomping at the bits for Jimmy G.
I mean, listen, you're talking about how the Jets need a game manager. That's why I do think it makes sense for one of them, a team like that, maybe the Raiders, to go after him. It'll be interesting to see if like Tom Brady or someone moves as well. There are a lot of reports coming out saying that Brady wants out of Tampa Bay. He wants to keep playing, give up his marriage.
He needs to retire, man.
No, he's coming back. He wants to come back from what I'm seeing.
I just don't. I mean, at some point, right? I mean, could you imagine being like a 45, 46-year-old man getting pummeled by a 22-year-old, 350-pound defensive lineman?
I mean, they'll just call a flag, so it's fine. You can't touch Tom Brady.
That's true.
So, there you go.
I mean,
problem solved.
Yeah, but it's still though, man. Like I think Brady, and the thing is too, if Brady continues to struggle, as his career winds down, which he likely will, I think that's probably probably a pretty good time to pick up some Brady if you want to, and because I think in the short term, his cards are no one's really going to be thinking of him as much, and then eventually as time goes on he ends up becoming Mickey Mantle or Babe Ruth. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I mean, the issue is we saw what happened when Brady retired the first time. They all dropped. So I think people will be a little more conscious now, which is interesting. It's definitely a different
long-term hold. See, and I think, and I think that's the difference. I think, and I don't know how you think. I don't want to assume that you think short-term, but I know for me, even if I get a card and move it a month later, when every single card I get, I am truly thinking long-term. every single card, because in my mind I almost kid myself. I almost like trick myself into thinking like every single card I get is a long-term hold, because that's really my mindset. But then all of a sudden, the Extraordinary Cards account on Instagram will post like a Gaudy Babe Ruth,
Man,
and I'll
fuck
be
that
like,
guy.
holy crap, that card I just bought a month ago I thought was a long-term hold. That's going to be my trade bait. I need to send this to Dave and see what his thoughts are. You know what I mean? So, but every card I pick up, I'm never thinking like, oh, let me buy baseball now, even though now is the smart baseball time, right? I mean, right? Anyone with half a brain is buying Julio Rodriguez right now so they can start selling him in
Or
March.
Juan Soto or Acuna,
Yep.
which actually leads into MLB talk. I do quickly want to touch on the NBA real quick. The Nets and the 76ers are the
I
hottest
love
team.
how you're switching up your
Yeah,
banners, by the way, on the
I'm
screen.
I keep it consistent, just like how on Instagram. Like
I
I
love
like
it,
this shit
man.
organized.
Which,
Usually
which
Kai's the one
by the
doing it.
way, which by the way, I got to ask you about your profile, and
Yeah.
I've given you your flowers on this already. I mean, I think if more people did it your way, whereas like, okay, if you want to see what he has available, go to his Instagram page, because he is constantly deleting
Yep.
cards that sell, and he is constantly reposting things. I mean, it's the cleanest, best thing you can do. But if I were you, like, I would wanna still at least have some kind of, like, you know how you can pin, like,
Yes.
old story post to your profile? Like, why not, like, your big cards? And I don't mean, like, the 3 pinned pictures at the top.
Yeah.
I
You mean
mean,
like
like,
on these scripts? I know what you're talking about.
yeah, exactly, like, why not, like, save some of those so you could show some of the biggest bangers you've ever had?
I mean, maybe I should do that for like the top 5, top 10 cards, like every single like 3 months, 6 months,
Like, those
whatever. That's
Brady
a good idea.
autos you had that you were flipping, the Super Bowl ones,
Yeah, I owned
like,
3. I was all private sales for a month of time during the national,
dude,
and those
that's
were like
crazy.
30K, and those dropped to under 10. Oops.
They dro They dropped the under 10?
So I mean, to be fair, the ones that sold for 10K or under were like authentic. They looked like
Yeah,
shit. The
yeah.
autos weren't good, but like it's still a good talking point.
Let me ask you, what are your thoughts on that real quick? Like when you're buying a card, like if
Yeah,
I were to slide into your DMs
as you do.
and what was that?
I said as you do. Go on.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I'm constantly like, "Where you at on this? Where you at on
Yeah,
that?" And even if it's just kinda like junk food for me, like I wanna keep the wheels turning, you
as
know
you
what I
should.
mean? And like, and I never do it to waste anyone's time by any means, because like if it's a price that feels great, I'm like, "Alright, let me make a move." But like if I were to slide into your DMs because I wanted a card, and I'm like, "Listen, what are your thoughts on this card I have plus cash?" Now, would you prefer an authentic grade, or would you prefer like a PSA 6 or 7 because you at least want to know the grade?
It depends. I mean, obviously for older vintage or even like, not actually vintage, but like older stuff, I'd rather have the grade. On new things, I actually might prefer the authentic. It depends. I mean, if it's a thick card, I probably want the authentic. If it's, I've seen cards as new as like 2009, 2010 slapped authentic. And I
Isn't
think
that nuts?
I think it's
I
personally better
can't
sometimes.
stand the authentic thing.
I mean, I wouldn't want Beckett authentic. It looks like shit. But like PSA authentic, I'd rather give the illusion for the person who's going after the card, the person after me.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is authentic. Maybe you should go try and grade it. Spend $200 and figure it out. I don't want to. I'll let you infer that's a 6, a 7, or an 8. And on the newer cards, I think it's easier to do that. Vintage, it all comes down to like, all right, is there a crease here? Like, is there something wrong with it? Like, why is this card authentic? But on the newer stuff, I probably would prefer the authentic grade than like a 6 or a 7. Let the person who's going to go own it after me make that determination.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's a little too matter of fact and a little too direct, but it's just how I don't know. My brain is just trained like that now these days. Like it's not even about me. When I get items these days, I do begin to anticipate an exit strategy on them, no matter what it is. Maybe it's not a
Yeah.
guaranteed flip right away. But I do know who I want to DM about it or who I know wants to own that card because they'll text me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you I would imagine, because you're just always posting stuff, right? And do you when you get a card, do you sometimes have buyers in mind, and then
Yes.
all of a sudden that buyer will contact you and you're like, I'm good?
Um, I don't usually like to deal items before they're in, just because like I've had issues come up where like something gets delayed or damaged or fucking lost in transit, which does happen. So I don't want to put that bad juju out there and then be like, oh, I moved this card A, and now 3, 4, 5 days later, it's moved to 7 different people, and I screwed it all up. So I personally do not move items before they're physically in hand or in a vault or whatever. But I do begin to figure out who wants stuff and tell them to like, hey, contact me when it's in. We'll talk. Here's my estimated price. I'm not going to give you anything determined until like I see it in person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'd rather not put that out there. And then the one time where I do sell an item to someone, it's 3 or 4 deals away, and I've caused an issue.
Yeah.
That's my biggest fear in terms of like moving items before they're in hand.
Yeah.
Moving through the NBA talk super quick. I know you have a hard stop in 10 minutes, so I'm going to touch on this quickly. Nets and 76ers super hot right now. Nets didn't play on Christmas. The 76ers beat the Knicks. The Christmas games were kind of fun this year. I didn't have a chance to really watch them. We're a football family, so like that was on TV. I caught the highlights after. Like I saw Aaron Gordon's dunk.
Oh my God, that'll be dunk of the year.
Yeah, that's up there. I also saw that I think Tatum dunked on Giannis too.
Oh, cool. I didn't see that.
I believe that's what happened. When you're kind of scrambling through thoughts, I believe that's what happened. It might have been I think it was a dunk.
Listen, Tatum better win something in the next year or two, because if not, I think that the hobby is going to I mean, don't get me wrong.
Sour on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's part of probably the second or even arguably the first most celebrated franchise in NBA history. It's really Celtics and Lakers, right?
Yep.
But so that helps. But I tell you, man, it's like he needs the win. He needs the win because pretty soon there's gonna be people nipping at his heels, and same thing with Luka.
I think Luka, you have to give a little more time to. Tatum did lead him to the finals. I don't know. It'll depend. I mean, they're the best team right now. I think in the East, they might be second. The point is that he still has some time. He's keeping them competitive. I would not be shocked if they win a ring in the next 2 or 3 years.
I wouldn't either. I thought last year it was starting to feel like last year was their year. Like it was like, whoa. I think like I didn't believe in them until they reached the finals, and then when they reached the finals, I was like, I think this might be Boston's year. But
we'll have to see.
Yeah.
MLB thoughts. I know you don't do prospecting, but I had the question asked. Are you looking at Chrome or Draft at all? Do you even care? Like,
no.
Yeah, I figured.
Yeah. I'll tell you what though. I do own a few Voltes. I own a few, I'm a Yankees guy, and I own a ton of ton of Judge, a ton of Gleyber Torres rookie autos. So it's like, if it's for my team, I do. If it's for my team, like, but I try not to do any super high-end prospecting, even on my own team.
Well, what do you think of the Yankees offseason this year?
Oh man. I mean, the signing of Judge is great for the organization. It doesn't make us any better, but I love the pitching moves that we've made, and I'm happy we re-signed Judge.
Yep.
I wish we didn't have such a big contract with him, but I understand that that's just the way it works. I just remember, A-Rod just riding the bench for the last like 2 years of his contract completely handcuffing us. We couldn't do anything because we had A-Rod's contract. And I can remember being at the games, and I could remember him not starting and him not even coming into DH. Meanwhile, he was making 30 mil a year when he was like the highest paid player in the entire league, and he's not even playing. And it just left such a bad taste in my mouth, and I can't help but think that's going to be Judge in 7 years.
I mean, listen, in 7 years, the 30 million or 40 million ever Judge getting paid per year is not going to be nearly even the top 25, 50 contracts in the MLB. Like,
yeah,
the way that they're going, you might even have someone who's making more money than Judge on the team at the end of the deal.
And that's what they said about Mahomes' contract. When Mahomes signed the massive contract, they were like, listen, 10 years from now, he's not even going to be close to the highest paid player.
And
So
they're right.
Chiefs did something smart.
Yeah. I love Rodon on the roster. I will say this though, and someone's gonna get mad at me for saying this. Nestor Cortez is gonna regress this year because he literally was regressing
Yeah.
in season. He also got hurt. Like some people are just not, their arms are not built up properly. Like he's not gonna be able to throw 200 innings next year. I think he threw like only like 125.
He was lights out. Nasty Nestor. He was great, and what's really cool is how close like him and Laz, the promoter
Yes.
Laz NYC, like kind of became.
That's why I said that, because I knew if Laz ever heard this, he'd be mad at me. He threw 158 innings last year.
No, well, listen, I mean, I hope this wasn't a flash in the pan year. I can't imagine he would have the same kind of year because he was light. He was an all-star. He was light.
He was top 10 in Cy Young.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So, yes, I am expecting him to not have the same type of year, but if he can still maintain, that kind of starting pitcher output, I'll be happy with that.
Listen, if Cortez is your fourth starter behind Garrett Cole, Carlos Rodon, and Severino,
yeah,
and you go Cortez and then Frankie Montas,
yeah,
if healthy, and that pitching rotation gives you 145 games out of 162,
yeah,
that is the best rotation in baseball. They just have to be healthy.
I agree.
But we'll see what happens there. We have a couple minutes left. Let's see if there's any good questions I wanted to ask. There's one from Sasha P. I think was actually on one of your roundtables. He was
Sasha P. Man, oh my
god, talking about signed vintage, family getting some more hobby love. I absolutely agree. I mean, I picked up that 53 mantle.
Listen, that 53 mantle. I wanted to, I was actually going to message you about it. We could talk about it later, but I actually messaged a bunch of people that I trust about it, and they're like, nice card. Like, that's definitely a big card, man.
I mean, I paid 10.8K for it. So yeah, it's,
you got to figure it's a second year tops.
Yep.
Right. Second year tops. Probably that's his third most sought after card ever.
I would say that you probably make an argument for the Griffey mantle, like actually signed one from 94.
Yeah.
That's up there too, probably top 5, but like
I agree. Personally, I just don't like those dual autos. I just don't, unless you're putting Jordan and LeBron together, or Kobe LeBron, like it's just so hard to compare Griffey to Mantle. But I agree, though, at the time that was released, that was an iconic card. It still is iconic, so yeah.
Just wild. From Joe Guy Writings, I think we can end off on this. How do collectors like us, like you and I, find time and passion to create content? Because we're passionate about it. We love what we do. So if we didn't, I wouldn't be putting my face to a camera. I wouldn't be making this podcast. I'm sure you would feel the same exact way. If you didn't truly love what sports cards are, and I'm personally someone who's a little more critical and like outwardly critical about the sports card hobby, because in my opinion and how I treat things, you can't just look at it all positively and like everything's incredible, it's amazing. If you want to be critical about what you love and what you do, that to me shows you truly are actually hoping for the better of it. So that's why I do this. I'm not sure about you, but that's why I do it.
Yeah, and great point that you made. It's I definitely don't want to paint everything with like, with a rose colored, crayon, everything is peachy keen kind of thing. You definitely need to look at things from a realistic point of view. And I think the thing is too, is there's a huge difference between being a sports fan and being a sports cards fan. Now that often, like, it's hard to have one without the other. I do know some successful sports card collectors or dealers that really aren't big sports fans, but that's few and far between. But I think you actually have to love the cardboard, right? You have to love what you're talking about. And going back to what I was saying earlier, I think early on, my first 15 to 25 episodes, I did feel like I was struggling with what topics were going to be and what I was going to come up with. But the more immersed I became in the hobby, the easier it became. And I almost feel like I could put out a podcast a day. And I'm not saying it would be as intriguing or the quality would be as good. But I feel like I'm just so passionate about it that it's so easy to talk about. I just want to talk about it all the
I trust me,
time.
I feel that.
And the thing with you, you started the podcast after years of already being immersed.
Yes.
I kind of I was newer with coming back, and I was newer with being immersed in the community. So I was like, you could hear my growing pains through the podcast. And with you were like, Terminator hitting the track and field hitting the track already. Whereas me, I was kind of like that chunky kid still trying to get in shape while going out on the track.
The thing is, though, and I know we're at time, so I'll keep this point quick. There's different perspectives, and I appreciate yours more because you are able to, you can see the growth from episode 1 to 133. You can see the actual like growth happening over time, which is respectable. And like people like that story. I was on step 10 and you started at reading the instructions. Like it doesn't matter. Everything works out differently. But I know you have other responsibilities you have to go to. Rob, thank you so much for joining. Any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to add before we close it out?
No, man, just thank you for having me, man. I'll come back anytime.
Yeah.
It was great talking with you, and you and Kai have a great thing going. You guys are probably one of the 5 or 6 podcasts I listen to on a regular basis.
And he says soundbite. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely, man. I feel like you guys have like a Barstool vibe, but you're a more informed Barstool kind of vibe.
That's
You know what
almost
I
an
mean?
insult.
Like there's a lot of knowledge that backs up some of your hot takes and stuff, and
Yes,
some of your
thank you.
yeah.
Celtics will finish bottom 3, like I said, or Kyrie retires. Whatever dumb takes I put because it was funny. All right, I'm gonna end it like that. Thank you guys for joining. This will come out tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern. So, peace.